and welcome to QLD Off-Road Adventures. My name is Darren, and we're going to attempt to do something that's going to make quite an impact on the vehicle. The change we're effectively going to make today is we're going to do something that'll give it better power and lower some of the temperatures. So there's a bit of a hint for you. Firstly, I've not done this before, so just like anybody else, this is a kit, and I will be having my first attempt at it. And the second part is that as far as the product is concerned, there's no sponsorship. So the supplier of this product, there has been absolutely no deals at all. I have paid for it outright. So it's going to be as you would be purchasing it. So let's see how we go and make a go at it. Alright, so the product that we're using today is effectively I've ordered, so it's arrived, so we'll do a first look at it. I've not even opened it, so I've not seen it, and I do not know what to expect. So there's your first item, there's your second item, and there's an invoice and a fitting kit for instructions. Okay, so let's get rid of this rubbish. Right, so here we have the actual invoice, and the amount is $299 for the kit with the instructions, and it should include everything that's needed. So we'll see how we go. So firstly, I'm going to have a look at the instructions. The only reason being is that the work we have to do on this particular item, which is the intercooler fan, we are obviously having to mount them to the intercooler, and we obviously got to be quite cautious in how we do that, because you can do a lot of damage to the intercooler. So although it's a fairly straightforward fitting, I think anybody who hasn't done anything like that, there's a couple of things to look out for. I've never fitted this kit, but I have worked with intercoolers in the past, and the big thing to keep an eye on is just what you do. So the first thing is we'll look at this kit, and we'll have a look at what Barima Diesel, my apologies, has provided. So they've provided the instructions, and actually quite good. Like, they've done very well. They've taken screenshots along the way, so you can really see what you need to do and how to fit it, and obviously making sure that you get it right down to where to obtain your power source from. So that's really good, and it'll certainly be very helpful. Now, there are a couple of things from personal experience that I will warn with intercoolers. I think they're talking about doing it while the intercooler is potentially still in the vehicle. I will definitely be taking the intercooler out to do it. You've got to make absolutely sure that nothing gets into the intercooler itself, and definitely nothing gets into the air inlet or outlet pipes to and from the turbo, because obviously if anything gets in there and it hits the turbo, it's the end of it. So I think we need to, or on the motor for that matter, so I think what we need to do is just go and have a look at the vehicle now, see exactly what we're going to do to fit this kit. So we'll put these over here. Now, it's important to have a clean workbench when you do this sort of stuff, so keep that in mind as well. So for those of you who have not seen my vehicle before, it is an LC79 dual cab. It was ordered in November 15, and in I took delivery of it in March 16. There was two factors for it. The first part was that it required a stage 2 modification, in particular around suspension and load capacity, and as a result, it just took a while for me to take possession. As far as the vehicle is concerned, I know there's quite a number of people asking to see it and see what I've done to it, as I've done almost all of the modifications myself. I will get around to it. I've started sort of doing it and then just never got to finish it, and unfortunately it's predominantly due to my employment at the moment. It's my job is exceptionally demanding at the moment, and I've also got another business that I'm running on top of full-time employment, and although it was meant to have sold by now, unfortunately it didn't eventuate, so I'm still doing a number of things. So anyhow, moving on to this. So obviously we are going to fit the intercooler fans to this intercooler. Now I have, although it's a 2015, it's probably important to note that I've had a bonnet upgrade pretty well from the get-go, and as you can see it's considerably higher, and that will allow more space, and equally actually allows considerably more air to get under, just in comparison. I know some people say it doesn't make a difference. It does make a huge difference. I've seen standard models of these with the standard air intake, and they run quite a bit warmer as opposed to this. This does actually run quite cool, so I don't actually have issues, but clearly I want to improve the performance and certainly keep the motor a lot cooler. There's a lot of heat coming from the turbo that works its way through into the motor, and if we can reduce that substantially, then that's what we do. Now, there are some questions in regards to the validity of putting fans on top of an intercooler rather than underneath. The fan itself will naturally cause some obstruction to the airflow that comes through the scoop and down because of the body of the fan, etc. With two fans, obviously, even more so. Now, the reason they're not fitted underneath, there's two factors for it. One, there's very limited space between the intercooler and the engine itself. You would have a quite substantially reduced fan size that you'll be able to fit, certainly not two. The second part to it is you can do it if you wish by replacing the intercooler. There are some aftermarket, and I believe, don't quote me on it, but I do believe there are some out in the market now that do have fans underneath. They are substantially more expensive than I think you'd even consider, and some people will do it, and that's a good way to go. But I think realistically, the intercooler was built for this vehicle. Yes, you can upgrade and put a better intercooler on there, but I think as far as the size is concerned and the way it's put in there, I'm at this point happy to try and just put the fans on top. They will activate with the ignition, so the minute you turn the ignition, they do turn on, and they move substantial amount of airflow through. So although, as I earlier mentioned, there's somewhat of an obstruction from the fan body itself, because of the forcing of the air through, it will increase. Now, the final reason why fans, in a lot of cases, are not fitted underneath intercoolers, the space between the intercooler and the motor is potentially probably the hottest place in the engine bay, short of the turbine exhaust, and a fan structure, especially a polymer fan structure or plastic fan structure, probably wouldn't last as long as it could being based on top. So let's see how we go. We'll fit it to the top, and then we'll go from there. So first things first, we'll have a look at what it takes to get the intercooler out. Alright, so I'm going to apologise if I get in the way of these camera shots, but basically start with just taking off anything that's actually attached to the intercooler, and then I think we'll work our way around from there. Now, so the only thing I think that's probably really worth noting is that make sure that you put your parts or your screws somewhere where you're going to A, remember where they belong, and B, most importantly, don't lose any of them. So we'll start with these lines here. Alright, we're back in the workshop. So as I was saying, before we do anything we'll tape these up for a very obvious reason. We are going to be laying this on this side, because obviously the intercool fans go on the other side, and that then presents a risk of something getting down in there, and if it gets in there, there's a real risk of it getting pushed through into the motor, or potentially even the turbo, although less likely. Now, same with these. That's what I was saying out there with the rubber hose. Just run it over like that. There you go. And then the next step is to just run a wrap around it like so, and that's good. Now, just while you're working on it, I have noted one of the sensors here, which is that vacuum. Just be very, very careful. It's a very thin spigot. If you whack it, you potentially could damage that. Being towed, I imagine, wouldn't be cheap, and obviously you've got that temperature sensor. It's in the back here. So one of the things that we have to do now is try and work out how to best work on this without it moving around too much, but it's actually not too bad. We can certainly work with that. So now we'll take that guard off. this is the intercooler. So from here on in, it's actually worth noting, my car has 60,000 K. That's what my intercooler looks like. So I do blow it out occasionally, especially when there's a fair bit of dirt or dusty area, and some of it still gets in. You can't really help it. But I've actually got some collapse here, and that was due to, and I did find it, I got it peppered with some stones, and I actually, when I stopped the vehicle, just to check on damage, I'd had some stone chips and stuff in the bonnet, and I actually found one stone under here that had done all of that, so it's actually caved those in quite substantially, and this is one of the reasons why a lot of people you'll see fitting grills at the front. Now once the fan is on there, I think the fan will deal with a lot of it, but at that point it may even be worth considering myself, especially given I've got that larger opening at the front there, putting one on there as well, so we'll see. Alright, so with the instructions, it's basically now says remove the intercooler from vehicle, place fan on top of the intercooler as illustrated, align the fan bracket holes over intercooler core, fins only. So obviously what they're talking about is that tiny little webbing. Don't ever go through the uprights or the straight lines, because that's where your air passes through, or on the radiator your water. I know some of you know this, but we do have to point this out for somebody who might have absolutely no idea. Push through intercooler fins with a small screwdriver, so they're suggesting that you push down. The reason they tell you not to use a drill is because a drill, if you go either way, you will damage that core, and whereas with a screwdriver, if you're just pushing gently through, you should have no problem. I would actually even recommend it's a Phillips, that use a Phillips head, and go small, and you can then just put a bigger one in after and just slowly enlarge it if you want to be sure. Bolt the fans, the intercooler core, do not over tighten, just firm is fine. Now I'm going to be looking at how these kits are, and I'll make some decisions when I've seen them. But one of my concerns is this is an off-road vehicle. There's a lot of vibration in that vehicle. Now, if Toyota fits these solid rubber bushes here to take the shock out of the intercooler, they too also know that. And when you do corrugations, and this is not a mall crawler, so this does go over some hairy corrugations, there's going to be a lot of movement with the screws that are going through. And my concern is that inevitably it may rub through. Now, as far as I know, Barama Diesel have had this product for, I think it's close to 5 years or just over 5 years, and I don't believe they've had any issues. However, having said that, I think it's important to know that there's a possibility. So I'm going to have a look at how the screws are, because I can see in the packet now they've got a thread, and a thread is even more abrasive than rather if it was smooth. So I might even coat them with something, or put a bit of rubber or something through it. But we'll have a look. And cut the mesh out from the plastic, so that's what they're talking about doing here. And then mark and cut out small sections off the cover, so the fans will go into this solid part there a little bit, and so you obviously need to do a bit of cutting, which is fine. Mount intercooler cover over the intercooler, reinstall the intercooler into the vehicle, wire up the intercooler fans with the instructions. The power box situated on the inner guard is where you pick up power to run fans and ignition to switch to fan relay. Test the fans, and that should be pushing air down through the intercooler. Okay, so don't ever say don't read instructions. I generally don't. In a lot of things, I'm very comfortable doing this sort of stuff, but I would strongly recommend, especially when something that fragile you do. If you make a mistake, it's going to cost you dearly. I'll grab my first one here. I've just went and got a knife. It appears we might not need it, because it looks as though they've only been just stapled together. So that should be making life a little bit easier. Okay. So this is one of the fans, and as you can see, they actually fit perfectly within that. So that's really good actually. I'm very surprised how well they actually sit in there. And we'll grab all of the kits for it. So this is, by the way, what I was saying. I did see those bolts through the packet, and see how they got that thread going all the way down. That could easily act as a rasp, quite an abrasive item on the intercooler. Anyhow, both of these kits should be identical, so there should be no reason to ensure that you keep the packets, the parts packets apart. Okay, so here's the second fan. Now, look, to be honest, if you follow the instructions, and the instructions are well done, which I would believe there will be, I've just had a quick look. I don't think we're going to see too many issues, but ultimately this is what you're doing. So that is what I was talking about out there earlier. So you're obstructing the flow here with these heads, and you're also obstructing the flow here with that body. However, with the additional force that the air's pushed through, it'll be interesting to see the temperatures. I have taken some readings of all my temperatures beforehand, so we'll see what it comes out as. But yeah, so we'll put these over there. We'll get rid of this as well. Okay, so ultimately now, what we want to do is just check what they've done here. So we've read the instructions, so what we want to do is probably just have a quick look at the picture, which is really good for somebody who's... So they actually have brackets here that slot in and that go through, so that should allow you to ensure that they don't hit the cores. Now it's also interesting to note that they have butted them firmly together in the centre. So I imagine that is intended. What I'm going to do now is just having a look at how that's all cut out, and then there's a fair bit cut around there too. What I'm probably going to do, now I've seen exactly how it sits, is I'm going to take these off again. I'm going to refit the shroud. So this is the shroud. Now you might say, well, do you really still need that on there? Yes, you do. The reason is you don't need it for this. All of this will get cut out. But as you can see, there's raised edges, there's no edge at all. This actually gives you a solid surface for the bonnet seal to sit on. So when you close your bonnet, actually, and that's what all these marks are here. So you can see that's actually done by the rubber. And that seals there. So if I put this back how it's supposed to be, and then use these and sit them on there, then I think we'll get a bit of an idea on how that should sit. Now, the only trick will be is to try and determine how far away the edge is. So that edge should actually be fairly close. But what we're going to do is take that off, and we're just going to measure that, because that sits on there. So that rubber seal sits here. So I'm just going to measure. You can see the imprint from that edge and here as well. So I'm just going to measure that, and this thing here sits right over the top of that, so I can get measurements from the back of roughly how much I need to take out. Okay, so to get accurate measurements, what we'll do is, so that's obviously this side here, so that's the first part I want to start with. So if I go to there, it's pretty well exactly 10 mil. So from there, 10 mil. So I would expect, which is quite interesting, that as you look there, it actually lines up with the edge of those filaments in there. So I'm just going to put that back on, and spot on. So that's actually with the edge of the filaments. So what I can do now is I'll set this, make sure I've got it back to 10. So that's actually exactly 10 mil from there. So I'll make a couple of marks there. So there you go. So I now know where my 10 mil line is. Unfortunately, I've actually had to resort to a very old screwdriver I've had, because my screwdrivers these days are kin chrome, and they actually don't have a round shaft. They've got a square shaft or hexagonal shaft. So, but so if you get one that fits, through that hole, then it's just a case of very gently push it in, and what I do is, as I'm going down, I just gently keep turning it. It should hopefully create a nice clean hole for that to slide down. So now I'm just going to show you what actually happens. All right. So now we're right through the bottom. Okay, so what I've actually done is I've found some air line, which I've got here. It's actually breather line, and it's hard plastic. So what I'm actually going to do, and I've already had a look at that. So you put the bracket in, you put the screw through, you put that rubber seal underneath, and now we're actually going to put that in. Now this is very, very tight, and that's not a bad thing. So what we do is we just put it, just hang on to it like that, nice and light, and then as we proceed with screwing it through, it'll stretch it out a bit, and we just keep moving it down so it doesn't split. But what in actual fact happens is, I'll show this in a sec, it coats it in a hard plastic that can certainly withstand the heat, and because obviously that's the other concern. You've got to find something that's going to manage to heat and not, melt. I mean, the intercooler doesn't get that hot, but still, just something to keep in mind. Okay, so we're nearly there now. Okay, so what's happened now is I've actually coated the shaft quite literally in that really heavy plastic. So when that goes in there now, it's quite a firm fit, but as you're fitting it in there now, it no longer has that abrasiveness against those sidewalls, because that red plastic now sits smoothly against the sidewalls. So there we go, solution. Okay, so the first two are just in there, they're loosely sitting there, they're not screwed down. So we're now doing the next two, and the reason I would recommend that you do it that way is just to ensure that nothing has moved. So put these guides back in there, and then we'll find that lovely old screwdriver of mine and go for it again. So as I said, just very gently, don't force it, just keep twisting it, and you'll hear it all crackling, and it'll just naturally go through quite comfortably. Now, I did initially point out that I would probably be using a Phillips head, but as I said, The unfortunate part is that with the Kin Chrome ones I've got, they've got this edge to it that wouldn't be suitable for turning in there, because obviously got sharp edge flat. That's just round, so this one is the reason why we're using it. So